there, dear listener. We hope you're enjoying this lovely discussion. If you're not already aware, this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. A Pan-African nationalist and Garveyite network come to showcasing the rich and varied thoughts of African people. We have an exciting lineup of shows that we think you'll enjoy, including
the Bitter Medicine Podcast.
I think black people acquire too much buy-in. Like, we constantly have to sell black people on things that are beneficial to black people.
The Pro-Black Perspective Podcast.
I'm fearful that our people are not really studying how to get ahead, and we're kind of, continually staying behind.
The Harsh Reality Podcast.
To me, it don't matter. I think people so dumbed down, it wouldn't matter what you reveal to them. They still are in the matrix. They're in the simulation. They're going to keep doing what they did. They lemmings. So to me, it don't matter.
The Learning Curve Podcast.
Sexual access has never given you economic empowerment. The only person who has ever been economically empowered by a sexual relationship is the wasp and his woman.
The Cathedral Cheek Show.
When we start rising up to fight for our own, I guarantee you they'll stop doing what they're doing. I guarantee you they would have let their brother go. They was waiting to see what black folks were going to do.
Brother Bakari Podcast.
Black people love to claim folks that hate them, right? They are slave masters, and they are ashamed of who they really are.
The Forecast Radio.
Like, if you pray to the same deity as, like, your enemy, and that God blesses your enemy more than you may want to reconsider who you're praying to,
And Tanzan, African Mind.
Africans generally are welcoming of everyone. Sometimes, to my consternation, I think that they should be less, welcoming.
If you love our podcast network, we would be grateful if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our website at www.kwazradio.com for more information. Thank you for tuning in. And now, back to the program.
All right. Peace, family. Shoot. Okay, peace, family. Looks like, hold on a second. For some reason, I got this chat disabled. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that. All right. So, we're going to just read chapter 3 of Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Let's get this out of the way. So, and this is a good book. It's a good book. It's really beyond me why we don't understand propaganda, why we don't have active propagandists, but every other people do. Okay, every other people do. Well, let's see if like right now I'm thinking to myself, well, what would we propagandize, right? What would be our objective for propaganda? But maybe we'll get some insight reading this, or maybe I'll share some stuff on the way. But let's go. So chapter 3, the new propagandists. Who are the men who, without our realizing it, give us our ideas, tell us whom to admire and whom to despise, what to believe about the ownership of public utilities, about the tariff, about the price of rubber, about the Dawes Plan, about immigration? Who tells us how our houses should be designed, what furniture we should put into them, what menus we should serve on our table, what kind of shirts we must wear, what sports we should indulge in, what plays we should see, what charities we should support, what pictures we should admire, what slang we should affect, what jokes we should laugh at. If we set out to make a list of the men and women who, because of their position in public life, might fairly be called the molders of public opinion, we could quickly arrive at an extended list of persons mentioned in Who's Who. It would obviously include the President of the United States and the members of his cabinet, the senators and representatives in Congress, the government of our 48 states, 48 back in the days, right? The presidents of the chambers of commerce in our 100 largest cities, the chairman of the board of directors of our 100 or more largest industrial corporations, the president of many of the labor unions affiliated in the American Federation of Labor, the national president of each of the national, professional, and fraternal organizations, the president of each of the racial or language societies in the country, president of racial societies, see that? The 100 leading newspapers and magazines editors, the 50 most popular authors, that's me right there, right? The president of the 50 leading charitable organizations, the presidents of the 50 leading charitable organizations, the 20 leading theatrical or cinema producers, the 100 recognized leaders of fashion, the most popular and influential clergymen in the 100 leading cities, the presidents of our colleges and universities, and the foremost members of their faculties, the most powerful financiers in Wall Street, the most noted amateurs of sport, and so on. And this is actually pretty interesting because you have to ask yourself, how many of these people are African? How many people are African-minded? Okay, how many of them are black and how many of them are pro-black? How many of the blacks are pro-black? And what you find, like, because this is talking about the United States, most of these people are white and pro-white. Okay, most of these people are white and pro-white. And then, but here's the kicker. When you go to Africa, a lot of these people are black. Some of them are pro-white, absolutely. But some of them are also pro-black. And that's the big difference. And of course, it also tells you what you should be doing with your life. You know, who you should be a part of. Like, should you be a part of the Who's Who? Or should you not? You know, the other day, I was on Twitter, and I made a joke, and I guess people didn't like it. I don't know. But this lady commented on it, and I was like, oh, snap, I know this lady. Like, I think it's like Zainab or something like that. But I'm like, oh, I know this lady. That's the lady who dances. Like, she just dances like a cartoon character or something like that, right? Like, literally, deliberately choosing to dance like cartoon characters. But, like, that's not a really, like, I have nothing against her. But, like, that's a Who's Who. But not in the extent of molders of public opinion. It's just, you know, like, oh, she danced. You know, like, and that's the thing about us as a people. It's like, we don't, like, the one thing that you would think we would have, which is presidents of racial or and language societies, we don't have, especially in the West. Now, we do have this in Africa, right? We do have this in the Caribbean, but you know, this like the Who's Who of black folk are really, for the most part, either, you know, amateur, let's say leading theatrical or cinema producers, not even producers really, just theatrical actors, and then amateurs of sports. Like amateurs of music, amateurs of sports. Now you might say professional, okay, sure, but pretty much that's all we have. You know, like that's pretty much the gist of it. Like where it's like, oh yeah, I know that. Like for instance, right now you could say I know an IRL streamer. You know, like somebody who does streaming for a living. I know, like, there's this one black guy who's in tech, who's pretty big, but he's not a producer of tech. He's just a criticizer. Like, he doesn't produce tech. So it's like, when it comes to, well, and I'm not saying we don't have any university, you know, presidents and stuff, whatever. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to like positions of real tangible power, like we don't have that many. And let alone, like, how many of them have an African consciousness? Like, forget it. Especially in the West. Now, in Africa, you'll run into it, but in the West, you might not. Well, you're unlikely to. So, let's see. Did I skip something? Let's see. Okay, such a list would comprise several thousand persons, but it's well known that many of these leaders are themselves led, sometimes by persons whose names are known to few. Many a congressman, in framing his platform, follows the suggestions of a district boss whom few persons outside the political machine have ever heard of. Eloquent divines may have great influence in their communities, but often take their doctrine from a higher ecclesiastical authority. The presidents of chambers of commerce mold the thought of local businessmen concerning public issues, but the opinions which they promulgate are usually derived from some national authority. A presidential candidate may be drafted in response to overwhelming popular demand, but it's well known that his name may be decided upon by half a dozen men sitting around a table in a hotel room, right? So yeah, a presidential candidate may be drafted in response to an overwhelming, this right here, again, he's talking about conspiracy theory, okay? But you got to say to yourself, this was 100 years ago. This was what he observed 100 years ago. 100 years later, this sort of system, this sort of behind the scenes, that could have been tapped into. Let's put it that way. That could have been tapped into. That could have been pursued as a profitable route, and we could be in the aftermath of 100 years of essentially conspiracy theories, essentially oligarchies, and we don't really understand this much. So one of the things I found interesting was there was this conversation around why don't African people, like people on the continent, why is Africa allergic to democracy or something? And the only comment I could have made was democracy is not real. Everywhere is an oligarchy, and remember, this person is describing what we consider a democracy, or what we considered a democracy. And remember, this is 1928 America. It's not 1960, 1970, this is 1928 America, if you will, right? And what he's saying is, hey, look, even the president is chosen by like 6 people. The president is chosen by 6 people. The opinions of your local pastor is from somewhere else. Okay, and again, this is so important because when we talk about religion and its role inside of society, you can't overlook the political power that religion controls, if you will. So he says, look, in some instances, the power of invisible wire pullers is flagrant. The power of the invisible cabinet, which deliberated at the poker table in a certain little greenhouse in Washington, has become a national legend. Now, again, what he should have done was say what this was, because 100 years later, nobody else was fucking talking about. Nobody else was talking about. But, yeah, I gotta stop cursing, but it's gonna take time. All right, so there was a period in which the major policies of the national government were dictated by a single man, Mark Hanna, A. Simmons, may for a few years succeed in marshaling millions of men on a platform of intolerance and violence. Now, I don't know who Mark Hanna is. Okay, by a single man, Mark Hanna. So he says, major policies of the national government were dictated by a single man, Mark Hanna. Never heard of him. A. Simmons may for a few years succeed in marshaling millions of men. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up Mark Hanna really quickly because I never heard of him. Little accident murderer. I forgot. My one of the reasons why I'm even recording this in a way is because my internet is trash. All right, let me see if I can actually share this screen. Hold on a second. So this is not showing. We're going to Mark Hanna. So it's a little bit zoomed out, but bear with me. Let's see if I can do this. So it says Mark Hanna was a American businessman who, Republican politician who serves the United States. And apparently they're saying that this one guy from 1837 to 1904 was writing national policy single-handedly. Now, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and you guys can see my internet's like, pretty damn bad. But that's one of the causes. No, actually, it's not. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm abroad. It's really like it's a little bit more complicated than that. Hold on a second. Let me make the screen a little smaller. It's a little more complicated than that. Like, essentially, I'm kind of being denied service. Well, not really. It's just really, it's complicated. Like, you have to register for service, and the registration is taking a long time. But, all right. So he says, was an American businessman and Republican politician who served as the United States Senator from Ohio, as well as chairman of the Republican National Committee, a friend and political ally of President William McKinley, used his wealth and business skills to successfully manage McKinley's presidential campaign in 1896 and 1900. So, I don't know. Oh, what? Panama. What? Worked for the building of the Panama Canal rather than elsewhere in Central America. So it's a pretty big thing. After assassination, okay, so, I don't know. Okay. They say the aspiring kingmaker to his business empire, blah, blah, blah. So he owned newspapers, among other things. So maybe you want to look into this guy. He sounds, again, this person is laying out the blueprint, if you will, like the blueprint for white power. But and I think some people do take it seriously. Now, do we take it seriously? No, but some people do take it seriously. How to essentially, be kingmakers in a country that's not even yours. Now, of course, this country was this other guy's, but, it is a very, very interesting thing, Position yourself in media, position yourself in finance, position yourself in business, position yourself in technology, position yourself in government, right? Work together secretly, behind the scenes, and you can be kingmakers. But right now, the way how we operate, and I mean Africans, particularly Africans in America, I guess, but really Africans everywhere. The way we operate is we kind of just wait for other people to be kingmakers, and then we criticize. We say, "Oh man, Trump just said something, blah blah blah. Biden is so sure, blah blah." Yeah, it's like, okay, but you've been in the country for 100, 200, 400 years. Okay, why don't you make a king? Like one of the things about Obese, right, Obama, was that other people, the thing about Obese was that I heard about him a long time ago, like in magazines and stuff. Like when I was in I want to say like when I was really young, they were pushing him forward. Like he was actively being pushed forward. I want to say like 30 years ago. No, I'm sorry, not 30 years, but I'm old. 20 years ago. But it wasn't black people doing it. It was white folk pushing him ahead like, hey, this is going to be this guy should be the next president. This guy. That kind of king making, that's what we should be doing. But because we don't, it's like, yeah, okay, you're just going to take whoever else is doing the king making game. And you might say, well, what does that do with Africa, right? And it's like sometimes, now I don't really feel that way in Tanzania, but like for instance in Kenya with Ruto, some Americans sat around and did some king making shit, in Rwanda, I'll tell you this way. Kagame says that he was discussing, ending his term with some Americans. And the Americans were like, no, he was talking with Americans. The Americans were like, hey, why don't you end your term? We have a pretty good candidate for after you're finished. After you finish your term, we have a pretty good candidate for Rwanda. And then Kagame was like, no, let me stay in power then. Because other people are doing the king-making stuff. Whether you whether you believe it or not, other people are doing other people are looking at countries and saying, this guy would make a good candidate. And we're not doing that enough. Like we're sitting here in let's say I'm sitting here in Tanzania. After Samia's, the president of Tanzania's election is over, who's a good candidate? We should all know. I don't know. Okay? We should all know who should succeed. I don't know. Somebody's sitting around saying this would be a good candidate. The Americans are sitting around saying this would be a good candidate. The Russians are sitting around, this would be a good candidate. The Chinese are sitting around, this would be a good candidate. But you don't care. You're just like, whoa, who's this person? I never heard of this person. Oh, this person, he's the governor of Mbeya. I had no idea. Oh, wow, okay, the mayor of Mbeya. That's good, Oh, he would be a good candidate. I have no idea. Yeah, if you, it's kind of like the whole play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You play the stupid game of ignoring politics, you win stupid prizes of just, having no role in the governance of your life. I hope that's a little bit of a, something to think about. But let's keep going. So such persons typify in the public mind the type of ruler associated with the phrase invisible government. But we do not often stop to think that there are dictators in other fields whose influence is just as decisive as that of politicians I've mentioned. An Irene Castle can establish the fashion of short hair which dominates 9/10 of women who make any pretense to being fashionable. But now again, who cares about that? But it's an argument, right? Paris fashion leaders set the mode of the short skirt, for wearing which 20 years ago any woman would simply have been arrested and thrown into jail by the New York police, and the entire women's clothing industry capitalized that hundreds of millions of dollars must be reorganized to conform to their dictum, right? So again, this is once about, what's interesting is here, and I don't know if I like this or don't like this, but if you go to a government building in Tanzania and you're a woman with tight pants, like tight jeans or something, I think, you can't go inside. Okay, you have to wear a skirt, you have to wear a dress or something like that. And I think it also applies to men. Like men can't wear tight pants either. But like what man is wearing tight pants anyway? But you're supposed to dress a certain way. And what's interesting, again, this is 1928 America, where you would have been thrown away. But some people change your fashion now. For better or for worse is the question, but it is what it is. There are invisible rulers, and I'll tell you this. I was in the government building. I saw this lady. She came in with a dress. She had a tail. You know what I mean? The joke is woman's carrying the whole bakery or something like that. Yeah, she wearing a dress doesn't hide the body. It's more or less a formality. It's just more or less a formality, and it just kind of keeps it from everybody walking around in tight dresses, tight pants, all that kind of stuff in a government building. That's it, And of course, this also applies to government hospitals, and of course, government buildings, whatever. But so whether you like the rule or you don't like the rule, who cares? Just put on a dress and put on a dress, put on some regular slacks, and because you can wear regular slacks, it's okay. And just call it a day, Also, they say if you had the jeans on, you could just put a katanga or put something around your waist, not a jacket, but like one of those cloths that people wrap up in. It's not that serious. It's and again, it kind of keeps it from looking like a brothel, on the inside. That's pretty much all it does. There are invisible rulers who control the destinies of millions. It is not generally realized to what extent the words and actions of our most influential public men are dictated by shrewd persons operating behind the scenes. And again, this is what we should be doing. This is what we're not doing. This is what every other people are doing. Nor, what is still more important, the extent to which our authorities and habits are modified by authorities. In some departments of our daily life in which we imagine ourselves free agents, we are ruled by dictators exercising great power. A man buying a suit of clothes imagines that he is choosing, according to his taste and his personality, the kind of garment which he prefers. In reality, he may be obeying the orders of an anonymous gentleman tailor in London. This personage is the silent partner in a modest tailoring establishment which is patronized by gentlemen of fashion and princes of the blood. He suggests to British noblemen and others a blue cloth instead of gray, 2 buttons instead of 3, or sleeves a quarter of an inch narrower than last season. The distinguished customer approves of the idea, but how does this fact affect John Smith of Topeka? The gentleman tailor is under contract with a certain large American firm which manufactures men's suits to send them instantly the designs of the suits chosen by the leaders of London fashion. Now again, remember that we also notice that commoners, let's say, dress like celebrities. And the celebrities are dressed by firms and fashions and blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like people pay these celebrities to dress in their own clothes because it comes back in dividends. You know, you tell Taylor Swift, hey, you know, hold my bag, you know, whatever. Like, I remember there was this sister. I don't know how to feel about her. But there's a sister who produces bags, and there was a famous comedian who wore her bag, and it's like, yeah, people were like, hey, is that her bag? You know, and they kind of like might have driven up sales. I have no idea, but I mean, it wasn't like she wasn't that famous a comedian, but like this is a real thing. You know, it's a real thing that people are buying according to what they see other people do. And I can tell you this, here in Tanzania, when you pass by a barber shop or even a hair salon, a lot of the designs are celebrities. Particularly, what I could notice was a lot of them were American celebrities too. So like you could see like a picture of Ludacris or a picture of Chris Brown, you know, on the front of a barber shop. And it's, the idea is that you can get a haircut like Ludacris or Chris Brown, you know. And so on. So he says, upon receiving the designs, but of course it might be also, local celebrities, but I don't know the local celebrities, so I was like, it's like, okay, maybe. Upon receiving the designs with specifications as to color, weight, and texture, the firm immediately places an order with the cloth makers for several $100,000 worth of cloth. The suits made up according to the specifications, and then advertises the latest fashion. The fashionable men in New York, Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia wear them, and the Topeka man, recognizing this leadership, does the same. Women are just as subject to the commands of invisible government as are men. A silk manufacturer seeking a new market for its product suggested to a large manufacturer of shoes that women's shoes should be covered with silk to match their dresses. The idea was adopted and systematically propagandized. A popular actress was persuaded to wear the shoes. The fashion spread. The shoe firm was ready with the supply to meet the created demand, and the silk company was ready with the silk for more shoes. The man who injected this idea into the shoe industry was ruling women in one department of their social lives. Different men rule us in the various departments of our lives. There may be one power behind the throne in politics, another in the manipulation of the federal discount rate, and still another in the dictation of next season's dances. And this is the thing to remember, that somebody's sitting up and saying, oh yeah, let's devalue this, let's do that, let's charge this, let's do that. You know, somebody's sitting up and doing this. Now you could say, well, there's a mathematical model. Okay, somebody's crunching the numbers. Okay, somebody's crunching the numbers, and somebody's choosing a formula on how to crunch the numbers. Okay, because what you could do is, look, you could say, okay, let's be objective. Let's take all 50 states and take the median income or something like that, right? And then, wheat prices in the 50 states. You know what? People don't do it that way, right? They could, obviously, but they might say, well, let's eliminate the numbers from Florida. Let's take out the numbers from Ohio. Let's factor in this. Let's factor in that. And then of course, then they start engaging with different producers and say, well, actually, let's do this because of the farm, so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes into it, and when after the calculation is done, it's not some objective calculation; it's some subjective calculation in the direction of a handful of individuals. And that's how it's always going to be. Because even something like something as technologically advanced as artificial intelligence would do the same thing. Even something as technologically advanced as art, because then they might say, well, let's factor in the prices in Russia. Let's factor in the prices in China. Let's factor in, and then what nations you choose is up to you. Now you could say, I'm being objective. China is one of the biggest, blah blah blah. Russia is one of the blah blah blah. You could, but then you also like how objective can you be? Is the real question. You take in Nigeria, you discard Ghana. You take in Rwanda, you discard you discard Zimbabwe, whatever, right? Or Sri Lanka, or whatever. It's almost impossible to be objective, especially on this level of governance, right? Because even this, you say to yourself, well, look, where did you get these numbers from? Who's reporting these numbers to you? How are they trained? It's a very, very complicated science. It's not something to look at as an objective truth. So he says, if there were a national invisible cabinet ruling our destiny, is a thing which is not impossible to conceive of, it would work through certain group leaders on Tuesday for one purpose and through an entirely different set on Wednesday for another. The idea of invisible government is relative. There may be a handful of men who control the educational methods of the great majority of our schools, yet from another standpoint, every parent is a group leader with authority over his or her children, right? Okay, you see? Now, the invisible government tends to be concentrated in the hands of the few because of the expenses of manipulating the social machinery which controls the opinions and habits of the masses. To advertise on a scale which will reach 50 million persons is expensive. To reach and persuade the group leaders who dictate the public thoughts and actions is likewise expensive. Now, again, it's kind of like this YouTube channel. If you like this content, like, subscribe, all that stuff, right? But recognize this. Look at the view button, the view count. It's going to be between 11 and 30, regardless of when you watch it. So it could be 3 years from now. It'll be between 11 and 30. Okay, 11 and 30 people watching this. Okay, and that's okay. But that's because I'm blacklisted. What does blacklisted mean? It basically means YouTube doesn't want you to see my content. You have to pretty much find it, direct link. Now, maybe I might link this around different places, but you pretty much have to find it, direct link, and it just won't recommend it. Why? Because YouTube is a billion, multi-billion dollar industry. Okay? Multi-billion-dollar industry, and what it requires to be it's expensive. Let's just put it that way. Every country has access to it, and it requires the hosting of terabytes upon terabytes of videos and technology and all that stuff, right? It's expensive. And so what they do with that is that they advertise on the platform, or people are keeping it afloat, and they're keeping it afloat because right now it seems like a good machine for propaganda, a good social machinery for manipulating and controlling the opinions and habits of the masses. Okay, it's a hold on a second. It's a good machine for that purpose. Yeah. So, sorry. I think I hear my door, but it's fine as long as it's not somebody I know. So because it's a good machine for that purpose, they do not want negative opinions and habits being propagated, because then it could impede upon their profitability, right? And so because of that, that's what they're doing. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. Now hold on a second. Looks like people are actually. Hold on a second. Give me 2 seconds. I have to text about this. All right. So back to what we were talking about. So For this reason, there's an increasing tendency to concentrate the functions of propaganda in the hands of the propaganda specialist. The specialist is more and more assuming a distinct place and function in our national life. So again, the propaganda specialist, again, it could be YouTube. You see, so now YouTube is going to make a deal because it's profitable. Make a deal, like, all right, let's put it this way. Let's say, suppose I were rich. And let's suppose I were rich. If I were rich, I would pay YouTube to promote my material, right? Which you could do, obviously, if you could just do the advertising thing, right? Promote my material, but also demote material counter to my material. And if the counter people, right, were not rich, then YouTube would go for the deal. You know? If it's more, because basically if I say, hey, look, I don't want to see, like, let's say I'm a rich guy, right? I don't want to see, like, let's say I have a company, let's call it Uncobia, right? Or actually, let's just use my book. Like, I have Uangalifu, the book, right? Let's say I don't like, I don't know, let's say Neely Fuller or whatever, right? I don't like Neely Fuller. I don't want to, like, accidentally promote somebody else's material, but yeah, I don't like Neely Fuller, right? So I tell YouTube, and of course I shouldn't do this with somebody, you know, who's in the same field kind of, but like still, I tell YouTube, hey, look, I'll pay you money to advertise Uangalifu. And it's like, okay, sure, that's normal. Then I say, look, on top of that, I also don't want to see Neely Fuller material on this platform. And they're like, okay, we'll ask Neely Fuller if that's a good idea. And Neely Fuller says, I'm not paying shit. And they say, okay, so how much money were you paying? They're going to ask me, how much money were you paying in order to get Neely Fuller off the platform? And that's it. And that's exactly, like that's a good business model for YouTube. And it's also a good business model for me if I were wealthy, right? But anyway, keep going. But by the way, you guys can check out Uangalifu if you want, and all that kind of stuff. So new activities call for, yeah, I did hear the door knocking, but I'm not sure who it is, and I don't think it's, I think it's like basically, it's probably not important. So new activities call for new nomenclature. The propagandist who specializes in interpreting enterprises and ideas to the public and in interpreting the public to promulgators of new enterprises and ideas has come to be known by the name of Public Relations Counsel. The new profession of public relations has grown up because of the increasing complexity of modern life and the consequent necessity for making the action of one part of the public understandable to other sectors of the public. So sorry, I got a little distracted. I don't know if, I should probably check my door. Hold on a second. Let me see. How do I mute this? Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Never mind. I was just making sure it wasn't the lady at the door. But all right. So new activities call for new nomenclature. The propagandists who specialize in interpreting enterprises and ideas to the public and interpreting the public to promulgators of new enterprises and ideas has come to be known by the name of Public Relations Counsel. Now again, you can just think of this TikTok, YouTube, whatever, right? But this is 1928, so they didn't have those. The new profession of public relation has grown up because of the increasing complexity of modern life and the consequent necessity for making the action of one part of the public understandable to other sectors of the public. It is due to the increasing dependence of organized power of all sorts upon public opinion. Governments, whether they are monarchical, constitutional, democratic, or communist, depend upon acquiescent public opinion for the success of their efforts, and in fact, government is only government by virtue of public acquiescence. Actually, hold on a second. I should check on this. Give me 2 seconds. All right, sorry about that. I have to remind my son not to open the door, just in case. I think it's just possibly, I don't know who it is, honestly, but because I don't know who it is, I don't want him opening the door, and I can't do anything about it. So, depend upon acquiescent public opinion for the success of their efforts, and in fact, government is only government by virtue of public acquiescence. Industries, public utilities, and you see, look at this. He says, public opinion for the success of their efforts. And in fact, government is only government by virtue of public acquiescence. So for the most part, most of us kind of just agree. Now, that's not true. Obviously, there's still the reality that force is really what government is relying upon. But, you can always meet force with force. I mean, you might not always win, but depending on there's a possibility you can win. If the public goes so against something, it's possible that they can win. So industries, public utilities, educational movements, indeed all groups representing any concept or product, whether they are majority or minority ideas, succeed only because of approving public opinion. Public opinion is the acknowledged partner in all broad efforts. The Public Relations Council, then, is the agent who, working with modern media or communication and the group formations of society, brings an idea to the consciousness of the public. But he is a great deal more than that. He is concerned with courses of action, doctrines, systems, and opinions, and securing of public support for them. He is also concerned with tangible things, such as manufacturing and raw products. He is concerned with public utility, with large trade groups and associations representing entire industries. So, again, the blueprint for YouTube, right? He functions primarily as an advisor to his client, very much as a lawyer does. A lawyer concentrates on the legal aspects of the client's business. A counsel on public relations concentrates on the public contracts of his client's business. Every phase of his client's ideas, products, or activities which may affect the public or in which the public may have an interest is part of its function. And again, you have these social media liaisons at this point in time. Now you might say to yourself, why do you keep bringing up social media? Well, because, if we're talking about 1928, well, because really when you read a book, you're talking about 2024. If you read a book in 2024, you're talking about 2024. Do not read anything outside of that context. And it's the reading of things outside of the context that really messes with people, because we're going to say, hey, 70 years ago, this person, he chopped this person's toe off. Oh my gosh, they're so cruel. And it's like, okay, but that's 80 years ago. Okay, unless it's related to, they're so cool. Okay, that's fine. But unless it's related to today, just try to relate it to today. That's what I would say. So, for instance, in the specific problem of the manufacturer, he examines the product, the markets, and in ways in which the public reacts to the product, the attitude of the employees to the public, and towards the product and the cooperation of the distribution agencies. The Council on Public Relations, after he has examined all these and other factors, endeavors to shape the actions of his client so that they will gain the interest, the approval, and the acceptance of the public. The means by which the public is apprised of the actions of his client are as varied as the means of communication themselves. Such a conversation, letters... The means by which the public is apprised of the actions of his client are as varied as the means of communications themselves, such as conversation, letters, the stage, the motion picture, the radio, the lecture platform, the magazine, the daily newspaper. The Council on Public Relations is not an advertising man, but he advocates advertising where that is indicated. Very often he is called in by an advertising agency to supplement his work on behalf of a client. His work and that of the advertising agency do not conflict with or duplicate each other. So basically somebody, and again, you have these people today, we call them social media liaisons, but they are actively promoting your wares. Now, here in Africa, at least where I'm at, this is not that popular. Especially when you go more further into the interior, you don't find it. So there is an opportunity for this, But the thing you got to remember too is that there's different levels of there's different types of businesses. So there's like the commodity, like you can sell products or commodities, like goods or I don't know how they call them, but basically commodities are the things that you don't actually advertise, and those are the big things, like not the big things, but those are the things that people like kind of buy because they need them, like tomatoes and avocados and stuff. You don't really advertise tomatoes, avocados, and so on and so forth. So a lot, or like USB cables and that kind of stuff. Like people kind of just buy them because they need them, and they don't really buy them because you show them a good image of a family, plugging in their iPhones or something. You know what I mean? So he says his first efforts are naturally devoted to analyzing his client's problems and making sure that what he has to offer the public is something which the public accepts or can be bought to accept. It is futile to attempt to sell an idea or to prepare the ground for a product that is basically unsound. For example, an orphan asylum is worried about a falling off in contributions and a puzzling attitude of indifference or hostility on the part of the public. The Council on Public Relations may discover upon analysis that the public, alive to modern sociological trends, subconsciously criticizes the institution because it is not organized on the new cottage plan. He will advise modifications of the client in this respect, or a railroad may be urged to put on a fast train for the sake of the prestige which it will lend to the road's names and hence to its stocks and bonds. So again, he's like, people might be of the opinion that the institution's plan is not pretty good. Anyway, if the corset makers, for instance, wish to bring their product into fashion again, he would unquestionably advise that the plan was impossible, since women have definitely emancipated themselves from the old style corset. Yet his fashion advisor might report that women might be persuaded to adopt a certain type of girdle which eliminated the unhealthful features of the corset. His next effort is to analyze his public. He studies the group which must be reached and the leaders through whom he may approach these groups. Now, this is actually pretty important. So a lot of people do have local leadership. Whether you recognize it or not, a lot of people do. And there's a book, I tell you guys the story all the time, but there's this book where this guy is saying, approach gang leaders. If you're trying to do things inside of an inner city, approach gang leaders too. Now, I don't advise that personally, but the sentiment is there. Now, I don't personally advise that. One time, somebody did set me up with a gang leader, and it was it didn't go that bad, but it was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, okay. I probably should have told him he was a gang leader before I met him, but yeah. So anyway, social groups, economic groups, geographical groups, age groups, doctrinal groups, language groups, cultural groups, all these represent the division through which, on behalf of his client, he may talk to the public. Only after this double analysis has been made and the result collated has the time come for the next step, the formulation of policies governing the general practice, procedure, and habits of the client in all those aspects in which he comes in contact with the public. And only when these policies have been agreed upon is it time for the fourth step. The first recognition of the district functions of the Public Relations Council arose, perhaps in early years of the present century, as a result of the insurance scandal. This is so hard. All right, let's try this again. The first recognition of the distinct functions of the Public Relations Council arose, perhaps in the early years of the present century, as a result of the insurance scandals coincident with the muckraking of corporate finance in the popular magazines. The interests thus attacked suddenly realized that they were completely out of touch with the public they were professing to serve, and required expert advice to show them how they could understand the public, interpret themselves to it. So, what's interesting is that, here you have America taking credit for basically public relations councils. Now, whether that's true or not, again, it kind of parallels what I said about, you might not really see this, on the continent of Africa. But this kind of informs you that, you could have an advantage, especially in Africa, just given the fact that in some respects, some things are not as sociologically advanced. And I mean, that's a good thing. It could be a good thing sometimes and a bad thing sometimes. Just put it that way. Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, prompted by the most fundamental self-interest, initiated a conscious, directed effort to change the attitude of the public towards insurance companies in general, towards itself in particular, to its profit and the public's benefit. It tried to make a majority movement of itself by getting the public to buy its policies. It reached the public at every point of its corporate and separate existences. To communities, it gave health surveys and expert counsel. To individuals, it gave health creeds and advice. Even the building in which the corporation was located was made a picturesque landmark to see and remember. In other words, to carry on the associative process. And so this company came to have a broad general acceptance. The number and the amount of its policies grew constantly, and its broad contracts with society increased. So within a decade, many large corporations were employing public relations counsel under one title or another, for they had come to recognize that they depended upon public goodwill for their continued prosperity. It was no longer true that it was none of the public's business how the affairs of a corporation were managed. They were obliged to convince the public that they were conforming to his demands as to honesty and fairness. Thus, a corporation might discover that its labor policy was causing public resentment and might introduce a more enlightened public policy solely for the sake of general goodwill. Or a department store hunting for the cause of diminishing sales might discover that its clerks had a reputation for bad manners, initiate formal instruction in courtesy and tact. Now again, remember, I don't want to just keep talking about American companies, but let's keep going. The public relations experts may be known as public relations directors or counsel. Often he is called secretary or vice president or director. Sometimes he is known as cabinet officer or commissioner. By whatever title he may be called, his function is well defined and his advice has definite bearing on the conduct of the group or individual with whom he is working. Many persons still believe that the public relations counsel is a propagandist and nothing else. But on the contrary, the stage at which many suppose he starts his activity may actually be the stage at which he ends them. After the public and the clients are thoroughly analyzed and policies have been formulated, his work may be finished. In other cases, the work of the Public Relations Council must be continuous to be effective, for in many instances, only by a careful system of constant, thorough, and frank information will the public understand and appreciate the value of what a merchant, educator, or statesman is doing. Now, again, you have these things. The only question is, how can we get this going in Africa, right? And how can we safely get this going in Africa? A lot of places in Africa, it's not safe to be political, let's say, right? Now, maybe you don't want to be political. Maybe you just want to advance yourself professionally, right? That's another concern. And that's a question of what we can and can't do. So let's keep going. The Council on Public Relations must maintain constant vigilance because inadequate information or false information from unknown sources may have results of enormous importance. A single false rumor at a critical moment may drive down the price of a corporation's stock, causing a loss of millions to stockholders. An air of secrecy or mystery about a corporation's financial dealings may breed a general suspicion capable of acting as an invisible drag on the company's whole dealings with the public. The Council on Public Relations must be in a position to deal effectively with rumors and suspicions, attempting to stop them at their source, counteracting them promptly with correct or more complete information through channels which will be most effective, or best of all, establishing such relations of confidence in the concern's integrity that rumors and suspicions will have no opportunity to take root. His function may include the discovery of new markets, the existence of which has been unsuspected. If we accept public relations as a profession, we must also expect it to have both ideals and ethics. The ideal of the profession is a pragmatic one. It is to make the producer, whether that producer be a legislature making laws or a manufacturer making a commercial product, can understand what the public wants and to make the public understand the objective of the producer. In relation to industry, the idea of the profession is to eliminate the waste and the friction that results when an industry does things or makes things which is publicly does not want, or when the public does not understand what is being offered it. For example, the telephone company maintains extensive public relations departments to explain what they are doing. so that energy may not be burned up in the friction of misunderstanding. A detailed description, for example, of the immense and scientific care which the company takes to choose clearly understandable and distinguishable exchange names helps the public to appreciate the effort that is being made to give good service, seems to cooperate by enunciating clearly. It aims to bring about an understanding between educators and educated, between government and the people, between charitable institutions and contributors, between nations and nation. The profession of public relations counsel is developing for itself an ethical code which compares favorably with that governing the legal and medical professions. In part, this code is forced upon the public relations counsel by the very conditions of his work, while recognizing, just as the lawyer does, that everyone has the right to present his case in his best light. He nevertheless refuses a client whom he believes to be dishonest, a product which he believes to be fraudulent, or a cause which he believes to be antisocial. One reason for this is that even though a special pleader, he is not dissociated from the client in the public's mind. Another reason is that while he is pleading before the court of public opinion, he is at the same time trying to affect the court's judgment and action. In law, the judge and jury hold the deciding balance of power. Public opinion, the public relations counsel is judge and jury because through his pleading of a case, the public may accede to his opinion and judgment. He does not accept the client whose interests conflict with those of another client. He does not accept the client whose case he believes to be hopeless or whose product he believes to be unmarketable. Right? He should be candid in his dealings. It must be repeated that his business is not to fool or hoodwink the public. If he were to get such a reputation, his usefulness in the profession would be at an end. When he is sending out propaganda material, it is clearly labeled as to source. The editor knows from whom it comes and what its purpose is, and accepts or rejects it on its merit as news. Yeah. So this is probably a little interesting, but what I want to say is this: that today some people are actually doing propaganda for things that they know are bad. You know, and this is the thing, and you know, we see this particularly with like religious groups per se. But like a lot of religious groups may prohibit, say, the sale of alcohol among themselves, and then, you know, or even the sale of pornography among themselves, or the advertising of pornography among themselves, and then they promote it against other people, and that's what, you know, is like a little bit changed from Edward Bernays' time, but it also kind of tells you that, like, you know, kind of look at this from an economical standpoint. You know, at some point, people are just doing a job, just looking to get paid. And at some point, they recognize, hey, you know what? If it can't bite, like the way how people live their lives. And again, this is in my book, Uangalifu. Check it out, right? But the way how people live their lives really is they look for the consequences. What are the consequences for me promoting pornography in somebody else's community? What are the consequences? I get money. That's the consequence. Now, if I'm promoting pornography in my own community, yeah, there's consequences that, like, you know, like my family could get fucked up. I gotta stop cursing. But my family could be impacted. But if it's not in my community, my family's not impacted. Is the logic that other people are using. And so, you know, that's something to be mindful of. But other than that, I appreciate everybody for listening. Like I said, let's try to get 100 people. Let's try to get 100 people. If we only have 30, okay. You know, can't do much about that. But appreciate you guys for stopping and listening. And until next time. Shem Hotep, Ankuja Saneb Neb, Amen, Ma'at, Dua, Netre.